you're listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast, where we bring you insights and inspiration for growing your self-publishing business. We're your hosts. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Joni.
This week on the podcast, we are talking to Kate Tilton. She is the founder of Kate Tilton Author Services, where she has been helping authors since 2010. Kate helps authors of all stripes navigate the publishing world and connect with readers.
It was great talking to Kate. I actually met her last year in St. Louis when we went to a conference back when we were allowed to travel. And I was really impressed by her. Her knowledge in the publishing industry is very extensive. She actually started her career, I think she tells this story later on, but she told us that she responded to one of her favorite authors' call for help on Twitter back when she was in high school. And she ended up being a virtual assistant to this author. And she has spun that into a full-time career. So she has well over 10 years of experience, I believe. Mm-hmm. And so she was there at the beginning, back when indie publishing really took off. And she has a lot of advice for authors on how to grow their publishing business.
So it's a great interview and we hope you enjoy.
So today on the podcast, we're talking to Kate Tilton, who is an author consultant. Is that what you call yourself?
Yeah.
Is that your title? Yeah. So she's been working in the industry for 10 years. She did an interview with Chrissy 4 or 5 years ago. So a lot of you might have heard from Kate before. But we're really excited to have her back on today and talk a little bit about how her business is involved and about the kind of expertise that she offers authors. So thank you, Kate, for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and what your job is now?
Yes. So as you mentioned, right, when I first came on the podcast, I was just doing assistant work. And that's all that kind of admin work and, like uploading things to different retailers, going to the post office. I still do that work for some of my clients. But what I was finding is, a lot of my clients that I do have, I've had for many years. And it became harder to take on new authors, and I wanted to still be able to help. So I started doing more on the consultation side. And I find like there's, 3 different kinds of authors that I'm helping there. There is the new author who is just finding all the information out there to be overwhelming and needs someone with expertise to kind of bounce ideas off of and make sure the choices that are making make sense for them, make sense in the world of publishing. Then there are the, established authors who are just feeling really stuck, whether it's stuck with, where their career is going or what to do when it comes to marketing. And they just need someone with experience to kind of chalk it out and figure out what's next for them. And then I do monthly consultations, which can be either for new authors or established authors. For new authors, it tends to be someone who wants someone to help step by step throughout the process. And for established authors, it's usually about accountability and having someone to bounce ideas off of long term so that they know that they have someone to keep them, on track and also to keep them appreciating the work that they've done.
Awesome. Can you tell us how you got started? Because I kind of love this story.
Yeah. So I was a senior in high school. I went to school in Georgia, but my family was in New Hampshire. So my mom was driving us home from the airport for Christmas break. And as, most teenagers do, I'm on my phone. And Twitter was, my jam back then. So I was browsing Twitter and happened upon a tweet from one of my favorite authors that she was looking for an assistant. And as a teenager I had the guts to say, well, could it be a virtual assistant? And she hired me for the job. So it was really, I fell into it. I didn't dream as a kid, like I'm going to be an author assistant. I didn't know that was a thing. I think a lot of people don't know it's a thing still. So it kind of grew from there.
That's really cool, though. It's really entrepreneurial. I don't think I did anything as interesting or as that when I was that age, or as spontaneous as saying, you know what, I can totally do that. Can I do it virtually? That's awesome.
Yeah. And that job especially, it was just doing what I knew how to do, which I'm very good at organizing and details. That's my thing, my happy place. So a lot of that work initially was checking through the author's email. She got just a crazy amount of emails. So it was sorting through that, getting rid of the hate mail that no one needed to see, putting the fan mail in a folder for the author for later, making sure that requests for appearances went to the publisher, and anything that was urgent the author needed to see, that they were aware of it. And then managing things like contests. And it was a lot of just, I would say administration, managing. And then I got more involved in the industry, got more involved in different Twitter chats that were happening, eventually started to host those myself and continued to go to different author events and meet authors, things like BEA. I mean, we met at a publishing event.
Mm-hmm. Do you get most of your clients through word of mouth and other authors?
I think in part, yes. And also people tend to Google and I pop up, I guess. And that's always interesting when you get an email that's like, I was talking to my spouse and they said, why don't you just look and see if there's someone that could help you with that? And then they're like, and then I found your site, so I'm contacting you. And you're like, that's great. But I think it's a lot of things like the podcasts. I mean, doing the Kobo podcast, doing other articles for different websites. So if you Google like help for authors or author assistant, chances are I'm going to pop up somewhere. And I've definitely had clients say like, I was looking and you just kept popping up everywhere.
We need to get some SEO tips from you then, because I think that's something that a lot of people want to have.
I think a lot of that comes from though just like building connections with people and not building those connections just because you're like, oh, maybe they'll put me on their podcast, but just because people are cool and it's nice to have those connections to people that in the industry. And then that does come from that. They'll be like, oh, I met Kate at this event and she's really cool and she does this, like, why don't we have her on the podcast? Or, hey, like that thing, I haven't seen a lot of people write about it. When I started 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot of articles out there about author assistants, which I was like, well, we should talk about this. This matters. Authors shouldn't have to do it alone. And I'm here to help. And I know there are other people that are here to help. Like I knew other assistants. So I just started posting that wherever people wanted it. And I think that it kind of organically grew.
I'm just curious when you decided to make a business out of what you were doing.
I started in high school, right, working with that one client. And the interesting thing about that was at the time, I put a lot of stock into that was my identity. I was this person's assistant. And, in college, I woke up one day to an email that was like, hey, I have to let you go, which was devastating to me. It wasn't like I did something and it just, sometimes these things happen. And for a time, I didn't know that I was going to continue. I was in college. I was still under the thought that you did well in school to get into a good college and you did well in college to get a good job. And that's not how it works, but that's what I thought at the time. Mm-hmm. But I love books. Books got me through so much in my life. So I was still participating in different things like going to author signings, something that I didn't have a lot of where I grew up. So it was really important to me to be able to go do that. And I really enjoyed it. And from there and talking to authors, especially on Twitter, I had a lot of Twitter chats that I participated in where we would talk about it. I ended up getting hired for another position working with authors. One of my other assistant clients, one of my first clients came from going to an author event, a traditional published author event where we did dinner after. And I was thinking maybe that author could hire me, but it ended up being the person that sat next to me was an indie author and she needed help and she hired me. So it's kind of interesting how that fell. I mean, I still work with traditional authors, but the majority of my clients are indie or they traditionally publish and also indie publish. And that's kind of where I fell into. And it kind of makes sense in a lot of ways. As an indie author, you put on all of the hats. So having extra help on your team is very helpful. And I like business. I like the marketing aspect and focusing on making those human-based connections when it comes to marketing versus more of the kind of technical side of things. I don't think it's wrong to do that. If you're good at Facebook ads and you enjoy that, that's absolutely fine. But I find there are a lot of authors who don't enjoy that. And it makes more sense for them to put their efforts into building up a readership that's going to be loyal to them long term. So that's where I focus. But yeah, it kind of grew organically from there. I ended up so I started in 2010 and then 2013, Joel Freelander of The Book Designer had me do a guest post on his website about assistants. And then I started getting a lot of clients and ended up making the decision to stop going to school and pursue the business, more full time. So I did school like part-time to get an associate degree, but instead of going for the bachelor's like I planned, the business kind of took over and, now we're in 2020 and I'm still here. So
that's awesome. So something's working.
Yeah, I think, there's definitely a part of it that's luck. And I think a bigger part of it is just the building of connections with people. And you never know when that's going to bring something new. Like you'll talk to someone and years later they'll hire you on for a project, or they'll put you in for a cool opportunity that, was never expected. So that's always been the focus. Like why I like going to events is just to meet with people, especially when I can connect people to other people. If Kobo's like, hey, we really need an author for X, Y, and Z. And I could be like, oh, well, I know this person. They'll be a good fit. Like I love being able to make those win-win situations.
I wanted to ask, 10 years in the publishing industry is basically a lifetime. And I'm curious about what has changed in your time in this industry and how has your business had to adapt?
Yeah, well, so much has changed. I think one of the bigger things that has changed is the tools that are available for authors have changed. They're much better now. I mean, I remember when you couldn't do pre-orders for ebooks. That was not a thing. And it was something that we desperately wanted in the industry. And I remember having a conversation about that at a publishing event. And they were like, well, we can't do that because what if the author doesn't do the files and that's too much of a risk? And now look at us. You can do pre-orders for ebooks. I think audiobooks is going to follow in the next few years. So that stuff has been really cool to see. We have technology like BookFunnel and Vellum. There's so many more freelance editors and cover designers that are out there. So it's easier now to make a professional book than it was when I started. Mm-hmm. The challenge now is that it's harder to stand out from the crowd. When I started, if you were an indie author, if you could publish 3 books of really good quality that looked like a traditional publisher's book, that was enough to really set you apart. And now that's expected because the tools are there and they're relatively affordable. So I think even more so now, it's important to focus on building connections with your readers and growing that audience than even back then.
What do you do with authors, or what kind of advice would you give to authors about building that connection with readers?
So a lot of it is about just being a genuine human on the internet. Mm-hmm. But part of it's also this aspect of consistency. And I think there's, especially new authors, when they're getting into it, they feel like they need to be on every single social media platform that exists. And they can't do any of that well. It's too much for one person when they're starting out to do. I think even when you're established, it can be too much to try to manage all of these platforms and do it well. So my advice is typically to just pick one place where you want to be and get really good at that first before you expand into other things. And to make sure that you're looking at it as, I want to build a relationship with people, because there's definitely I still see people that will, send me a newsletter that I never signed up for, or they'll send out, social media posts that are just like, buy this, buy that. And it's like, that's not how humans work. It's not how humans buy things. We do not like being sold to, psychology thing, like that's how we work, but we also love to buy stuff. So humans.
Yeah.
So it's a lot.
We do, as I'm doing now.
Yeah. And all the online shopping right now.
Yep.
It's a thing. But, when it comes to authors, especially because books are a form of art, it's not like a toothbrush, right? So it's less about, the features of this thing. It's a lot more about the feeling behind it, especially if you're writing fiction, or the escape that you're providing. So connecting to readers in a way that makes them want to support you, then they're going to share about you to other readers. And that's how you grow a large platform without having to talk to every single person who reads your books. But as you build it person by person. And I think there's this idea that there's like the secret magic bullet out there, and that, I need to sign up for this course or that course, and that will change everything. And, it doesn't. It's a lot of little things, and it's a lot about consistently trying and building. It's a race, marathon, not this kind of instant shoot to success thing. Like anyone that you've seen this overnight success in publishing is not an overnight success. They worked many years behind the scenes before they had that big break. And I think a lot of publishing, there is an aspect of this luck that's involved. But I also think luck doesn't happen to people who are not actively working to build an audience. Mm-hmm. So
I was thinking, as you were saying that, I had a conversation with an author recently, and they asked me this, so I would like your take on it. We were talking about what you're saying is so true about being authentic online and building those connections, but where does that come in if an author doesn't necessarily want to share aspects of their private life, or they want to have a personal life? Is there a way to reconcile that, do you think?
Yeah, and this is a great thing, because I've also had, authors who are parents, and they're like, I don't really want to share like pictures of my kids. I'm like, don't do things that make you uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. You can share things that are important to you that are not super personal either. You don't have to go on social media and share your deepest, darkest fears, but you might be sharing how you enjoy this television show or you enjoy reading this kind of book. For me, like I have cats, so people hear about that a lot. I also really like K-pop. So it doesn't have to be something that's like so deeply personal. It can be something that if you're going to a party and chatting to someone new, like what things would you talk about? It might also be that you talk about things that are currently happening. I lean towards, I don't talk politics. For me, that's just, I feel like it's not somewhere that I want to go with my platform. I prefer to focus on what can we do, what good things that we can do. And that's my focus. But you can talk about current events without getting super political too. And that was a decision I made when I first started. For me, I just found that the social media aspect isn't a great way to have a discussion about those kind of things. And it was also not who I wanted to be when it came to the internet. So I think there's that aspect of it where, just because something matters to you doesn't mean that's necessarily what you want to do when it comes to your online presence. And that's kind of a funny thing. Like we talk about being genuine, but also how you have kind of different personas. But that's how we are in real life too. You'll share different things with your family than you will with a stranger you meet on the street or with your work colleagues. So I kind of look at the online thing as similar. You want to share things that matter to you, but you also want to pick the things that you're comfortable sharing in that kind of a sphere, because online, things don't die. So you want to make those decisions of, okay, what am I comfortable with, sharing that does matter to me, and it can be things that, are personal, but are not so deeply personal, like the fact that you really enjoy tea or coffee or whatever it is. I mean, we're human and we connect over those things. I've connected with a lot of authors who are cat lovers. I had one person hire me because he was like, well, I see you love cats and I love cats and you like science fiction and I'm writing science fiction, so let's work together. Like that. I didn't feel bad sharing.
I love that.
Right? Yeah. And it's so definitely, I think there's a little bit of kind of experimenting and figuring out where you feel comfortable, but don't feel pressured to share things that make you very uncomfortable to have out there, because you don't need to do that to make a genuine connection.
So I was just curious, this is kind of a 3-part question, but like what's been the most rewarding part of starting your business, the most challenging, and then the most surprising?
So the most rewarding for me is always when I hear, I couldn't have done this without you. Or, I was so overwhelmed and now I feel like I know what I'm going to do next. I love that. I love being able to help people. That's why I do what I do. So that really is the most rewarding. I think the most challenging thing is when you have people who expect that you can just fix everything. Like you have the magic answer and there really isn't a magic answer out there. That's always hard because I really want to help, but I can't move mountains either. And then the most surprising thing, I think the most surprising thing is how much, as someone who, like when I talk to people that are not part of the industry, how many misconceptions there are about how things work. You'll hear someone talk about how, why is this giveaway not international? And that might be, well, because in a traditional publishing situation, you can only put a giveaway out to the territories that you have the rights for. Why can't we pre-order audiobooks? And it's like, because that's not a thing that retailers allow for yet. So that's, I think, the most surprising is, the misconceptions that are out there before people get involved. Like, people are surprised when I talk about the New York Times bestseller list and how, that is a curated list, which means sometimes people who sold enough to be on that list are not included in that list.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So they've definitely have on occasion, taken people off that list who've made the sales, or so the things like that people don't know. So they just assume, or if we talk about like a retailer struggling, well, someone will tell me that's not in the industry. Oh, it's because people don't read print books anymore. And that's not true.
No.
So you have, especially when you have like new authors who are coming in who don't know those things about the industry because, right, they have to do their research and start learning about it. And I mean, of course, there's the downsides too of the fact that there are companies that are out there who are predatory. I've worked with clients who have gone through that and, lost a lot of money. And then I try to help them as best as I can to recover from that. So that's probably the most surprising, is just the misconceptions.
We've heard from a lot of authors in these chats about the mistakes that they've made in their career and how they learned from them. Is that something that has been essential for your career as well? It's a little bit different to being an author, but are there big mistakes that you've made?
There are always mistakes, and I think it's also like you learn as you go with this, and I've also realized how people work very differently. So for me, way back in the past when I was first starting to work out, I used to work my hours and then get paid. I used to do free consultations. And as I expanded, it became obvious that like doing a free consultation didn't make sense for where I was in my career, and also took away from my paid clients, and I couldn't do all of it. So I had to start making them paid only. Not everyone's like that. Not everyone's at that stage. Same thing with payment schedules. Now I get paid upfront versus waiting. And for me, that's because this is my only income. This is my job. I don't have a husband who is, the main source of income, and then I'm just extra. So for me, I need to know exactly how many hours I'm working, because it's a quality issue. If I just say yes to anyone who wants my hours and then end up with too many, people aren't getting quality work because you're working 10-hour days or 11-hour days, and that's not good. So I think that's kind of, I don't say it's necessarily a mistake. It's just kind of a thing that you learn from, and you learn to adapt and as you grow into what works for you.
I wanted to ask you about, so obviously right now we're all somewhat under lockdown with this COVID thing, and you've been putting together a list of resources on your website to share with people. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
I mean, everyone is obviously stressed and kind of in this lockdown, but what I was also seeing every time I got onto social media was this person doing this really cool thing, this person really doing this cool thing. I mean, as much as there's, not good people out there in the world, I feel like overall, most people try to do the best they can and genuinely want to help their fellow human being. And I wanted there to be a place for people to find that, because it's very easy on like social media to see something, say that's cool, and then forget it later and not be able to find it later. So I was like, and that was something even for me. I'm like, all these cool things, and I have 1 million bookmarks now. So I was like, well, this is going to take a lot of time, but I'm just going to sit down here and put it all on a list. So yeah, I spent a couple of hours just poring over all the things I'd bookmarked and put it together in a list that I tried to break down into categories that made sense. But that's everything from, free or discounted books, free discounted audiobooks, activities for your kids, education supplements for your kids, things for you to do that are not reading, that are also engaging, financial resources for people in the US. I will certainly add international ones if I find them. And then some really cool things for authors. Some companies do have some training courses that they're offering for free or discount, or ConvertKit's offering a free plan now. So I hope it helps.
That's been a really nice side effect amid all the bad news right now. It's been really nice to see how the author communities come together and is offering things where they can, or even just offering support and that kind of thing. So nice to see.
I mean, that's something I've always loved about publishing, is how much people really like helping other people. Sometimes we can be a little bit awkward, like myself included, when you go to an event and you're kind of introverted. Now you have to try to talk to people. But, once you get through that kind of awkward phase, you realize that, everyone here is here because we have a passion for stories, and you can bond over that, and people genuinely want to help each other. So it's something that I really enjoy seeing, and something I'm, excited to see again when I get to go to in-person events, when we do those again, because I know we will. We're social.
Absolutely. Online is nice, and it is not the same.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit earlier about working with more established authors, and I wanted to ask a little bit more about that, because I think that's a challenge. Is some authors that are pretty comfortable in their career and they're doing well, and then there comes a point where I guess you stagnate a little bit. And where do you come in that situation?
Yeah. So for that, typically it is kind of when you have an author who is established, but they're feeling kind of stuck, and just talking through what they really want from their career. I think there is this kind of, I guess it's a little bit of a problem, right? That we look at success as kind of only one model. You have to be 6-figure author, 7-figure author to be successful as an indie author. And, that's not success for everyone. That's not going to make everyone happy. So sometimes the conversations with authors are that, like what really brings you fulfillment? Because it might be that, yes, you really want to push the writing harder and push the marketing and really grow a larger income. Or it might be that, you're pushing so hard that you're feeling burned out and this is not really bringing you fulfillment. So where is that middle ground without just, calling it quits and changing your whole life around? So, that's a big discussion that I have with a lot of authors is what's going to make you happy? And then how do we make the steps to get there and break down that goal? So for new authors, that can be like, I want to quit my day job. So it's like, okay, like how much money do you make from your day job? Like, let's break that down. And then for established authors, that can be, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to start building more of a direct readership? Do you want to grow on a certain platform? Do you want to grow your newsletter list? Where are you connecting with people? Are you connecting with people anymore? Have you stopped doing that? And kind of figure out what makes sense for them.
Is there one particular kind of simple error that you see people making a lot? Or is one small change that people can make to boost their careers? Or is it never as simple as this?
For me, I always look at every author as an individual. So I feel like there's not necessarily like one answer that will solve everything. Although the biggest one does tend to be that of really looking at, what do you want out of this? Because I have met authors who they really love their day job. They don't want to quit it. And then I have some authors who, they're professional speakers. So for them, writing is not what's going to make them their huge income. It's part of an overall, platform builder for them to do more speaking. So I think that's probably, if there's like one thing that I see most authors struggle with, is they try to take on too much just because someone said, well, this is the thing that helped me do this, without thinking, is this the thing that's going to be right for me? And that's kind of the biggest pitfall I see, especially and that happens to new authors, established authors, is that fear of missing out, that or comparing themselves to other authors. And that never works well.
Yeah, I can see that being really challenging because there's so many huge success stories in the industry. And especially if you're just starting out, like looking at these other people and going, oh, like, how do I compete? How do I compare?
Yeah. And part of it, I feel like, is trying to get rid of that idea of like, oh, we're in this huge competition with other authors. I mean, yes, there is a competition for people's money, but it's also kind of, authors are going to read more than one author, and people are going to buy more than one book in most cases. And really, you want to build the readership that is going to stick with you. So it's like, instead of trying to focus on, well, just that quick sale, focusing on that long term. If I want to have a career, I want to build up the readers who really like my kind of story. Like I'm a huge fan of Victoria Schwab and her writing, and she's written things for middle grade, for young adult, and for adult. And I read it all because I really like her as, as a person online, what she shares. It's very genuine. And I like her storytelling, how she writes her books. So that's the kind of reader that you want to build up, is someone who will follow you. And you'll still get, the people who only will buy one book from you. And that's fine. But I think that kind of narrowing the focus into like, who is that ideal reader for me? Who am I really writing this book for? It takes a lot of pressure off of this idea of like, I need to talk to everyone, and anyone that can read English could buy my book. You can't pitch a book to everyone who speaks English, because we all have different things that we enjoy and different things that we're looking for in stories. So who are you really writing your books for?
Yeah,
I love that author's books.
Yes, she's great.
And you're right. Like, I do read everything that she writes.
Yeah. So like that would be like, we are her ideal, target audience. So she talks to us directly. And then you'll still have people, like there'll be people who, kids who'll read her middle grade stuff who won't read her other stuff. People that only read the, the adult fiction, and that's fine too. But I think it's that aspect of, when it comes to marketing, I mean, everyone has probably heard this before, but finding your target audience, that is a thing. And it's something that's very easily overlooked or forgotten over time, I think, because it can be so easy to get kind of overwhelmed with, well, okay, like 1,000 people bought this book. Who are they? And it's like, they might not all be your target audience. So kind of staying true to that when it comes to all the marketing, messaging you're putting out there. So social media, your newsletter, your website, what events you choose to attend, that helps you do the marketing, smarter
If you could give one piece of marketing advice to every author out there, do you have one?
That is it. Find your target audience. And, for new authors or people that haven't done it before, it is a lot of kind of coming up with your best educated guess to start with, and then growing from there as you start getting readers and start getting reader interaction. So, as readers start emailing you back or you meet them at events, you can start to kind of refine what that target audience looks like. A lot of authors, I think, don't know really where to start when it comes to looking for a target audience. So I typically suggest to them that they check out the bestsellers in the genre they're writing and see what those authors are doing and what interactions they're having. You can go on any of the retailers, you can go on Kobo, you can see, who's the best-selling author in this category, what's the top 10. And most of them are going to have websites. That's going to be a thing. So you can then go and see, okay, like what social media platforms you can sign up for their email lists, see the kind of conversations that they're having with their audience. Particularly on social media, you can then also see, someone might be on, say, Facebook, and they post a lot, but they don't get a lot of interaction. And you can see that it's public. So you can see, are they getting likes on their pages? Are they getting comments on those posts? So instead of looking at just overall, like, well, they have, 10,000 followers on Twitter, but do they get shares and responses when they post things? Or is it just, kind of, I don't want to say fake followers, but just not engaged followers?
Who are the people that should think about hiring an assistant?
I find that people who are overwhelmed should consider hiring an assistant, and also people who don't want to do it alone. Same thing with, hiring a consultant. It's most people don't run companies by themselves, right? We work with people for many different reasons. So having someone on your team who understands what you're going through can be really helpful. I think we joke that half my job is therapy, but it's true. There's a lot of kind of stress and emotions that go into publishing a book. You're putting out something that you've worked very hard on for a long time. There are going to be people that read it who don't like it and who leave nasty reviews. This is the reality of being a career author.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, that people don't run companies by themselves typically. Like, I find whenever I talk to really successful authors who are doing so much and really they got into this because they like writing. So it's a lot to take on.
Yeah. And I mean, my biggest concern with authors who are trying to do it all, especially when they get more and more established and they have more and more things on their plate. I mean, for example, if you have 50 books out and then you publish a new book and you want to go back through all your old books and mention the new book, that takes a long time, especially if you're talking about all the different formats. So you have it in, your ebook, and then you also have a paperback and you have a hardcover, and then you have it on different retailers. So it's like you take 50 times by 3 for every format, times by how many retailers you have to put it on. That's hours of work. And it's very easy to just burn out. And that's really hard to recover from. And, some authors they'll quit, or they just they'll get sick and have to take a step back. And that can be hard to recover from. So, and I've seen that in business too, where people were like, I was going so hard and trying to do so many things and do it on my own because I could do it, but I didn't take care of myself. And part of taking care of yourself is making sure you have time off. For some writers that's different from, meaning like I have the weekend off. Some writers really do well working every day of the week, but it is about I take my nights off. I make sure I'm sleeping well. So that's something to just be aware of, is looking at, how many hours are you really investing into this, and where are you taking your breaks? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating well? Are you having conversations with people who are not industry people, like friends and family? Because that matters for your health.
And where can listeners find you online?
Everyone can find me at my website, katetilton.com. And then on social media, it's K8 Tilton. So I'm on, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
Cool. We will share those links. Steph's favorite question of all.
What have you been loving lately? It can be a book, a movie, TV show, anything.
Oh, okay. So I'm addicted right now to Animal Crossing. And
I'm so jealous because
I
trying to buy it.
Probably no one's surprised about this. between that and BTS, like that's how I'm getting through this quarantine. But
I
and
just
didn't
got
even
into
intend to buy
BTS.
Animal Crossing. One of my friends bought it for me. No, one of my friends bought it for me. He was like, that we can play together. And I've spent way too many hours building my little island because, I'm task oriented and I love having things to accomplish.
Oh, I would totally like this game, and that's why I'm not even going to start.
Yeah.
I can tell I would like it.
It's been a lot of fun, and especially with being able to visit friends that I can't see right now. A lot of my close friends also don't live near me, like they live in other states. So
you
being
can
able
visit
to
them in the game?
Yeah, you can visit them in the game. So that's been
cute.
nice to have like that kind of connection when we're so far apart.
Is it quite relaxing? It looks like quite a relaxing game for these non-relaxing times.
It's supposed to be.
Okay.
I kind of, Animal Crossing was designed to be something that is relaxing and slow paced. You're not supposed to what they call speed run through it, but I like to get things done. So, I upgraded my house all the way and I'm working towards that 5-star island. And
I love that.
It's a thing. Like my friend was like, I'm so amazed at how far you've come through the game. And we have a Discord channel with her and some of her other friends who play the game. And they're like, this is your first time playing Animal Crossing? Like, I can't believe that. And I'm like, it's just because I played so many hours of this game. Like, promise.
Yeah. This is the accomplishment.
Yeah, this is my accomplishment in quarantine, is that I have a great island in Animal Crossing with all kinds of flowers.
I tried to buy a Nintendo Switch specifically to buy this game, but they're all sold out in my area.
Yeah, I went through the same thing when I tried to buy my Switch. Initially, it was when Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda came out. And my friend had a Switch. I was like, I don't really play video games all that much. I don't need to buy a new system. It's fine. And I went to visit her and she was like, well, you should see the opening of the game. And then she puts the controllers in my hand and I was hooked. It was another one of those games where there's so much to do and so much to discover that I would play it for an hour and be like 10 minutes have passed. And she's like, no, it's been an hour. And at that time, though, Switches were completely out of stock. So I started calling Best Buy every week. And eventually they said, yes, we're going to get them in stock. And I was there with my chair first thing in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I did the thing. And so I understand the struggle right now.
I want to look at it.
Steph, are you willing to do that? I feel like you need them to deliver it to you, right?
Yeah, this is a little bit different with quarantine. You can't just stake out the Best Buy. But
That's true. Oh, well.
I swear it was sold out in 5 minutes from when I saw it was posted like in stock.
Yeah.
I understand people.
Well, they do have a mobile version of the game, which,
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a free mobile game called Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, I think.
Okay.
I think that one doesn't quite have the same visibility, like visiting abilities, but I also haven't played that in years. Like, that was my second time, like, dipping my toe in Animal Crossing and being like, yeah, no, this isn't for me, deleting the app. And then my friend bought me this one and
never turn back.
It's a problem. Like, after this, I'll probably go and play for a little bit and
Perfect.
It's a thing.
This is how we spend our days now. There's no shame in anything anymore. New hobbies.
I'm also watching a Korean drama that's great. So my friend gets off.
Which one?
It's called Touch Your Heart.
Oh.
And it is about a actress who ended up in this huge scandal 2 years ago and hasn't been able to get work since then. And finally gets a writer who says, okay, fine. If you go and work in a law firm for 3 months, I'll let you have this role. And so she goes and starts working at this law firm. And I love Mr. Lawyer. He is great and is just so blunt and honest. And, she's that actor. So, like, she'll say certain things, come up with excuses, and he'll totally buy it. And it's adorable. It's just enough of that kind of romantic comedy. And then they also throw in some really serious stuff, like her whole case and why that happened was because she was being stalked. And that comes in. So there is that drama aspect. Korean dramas are wonderful writing for the most part. They don't.
I just got into them.
Oh, okay. So there, I have recommendations.
I just watched, the first one I watched was Romance is a Bonus Book.
Yes.
It was so lovely.
Yes, I love that. He's one of my favorite actors. That was his last drama. Not like last one, but like his most recent one.
Okay.
So kind of like, where's the next one? I'm ready.
I've like started a problem because now I'm like, where do I go? There's so many out there. And
there's so mmany. If you need a list of like, here are the ones that we've enjoyed the most, I will send it to you.
I email you after that.
Steph needs this list.
Yeah,
I do.
Because there's so many different varieties. Like my first one was Boys Over Flowers.
Oh, I've heard of that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like probably going back to watch it now, I'd be like, wow, dramas have come a long way. But it's also one of those very classic. And that was Lee Min-ho, who's huge, another huge actor. And he just has a new one that came out on Netflix. So in Korea, they have to do military service for about 2 years. So he just got back from that, and his first new drama after that is going to be on Netflix. I think it already started, but I once watched a drama as it was releasing, and it was awful. It was like,
that sounds
the drama
like
was great, but the struggle in between episodes was awful. So I have decided like I'm not going to do that to myself again because I was in pain and it wasn't worth it. And that was W, which was also Lee Jung-suk, who is the guy in Romance is a Bonus Book. So that's a good recommendation.
Okay.
Like him, he was in W, and that storyline is about a girl whose father wrote this kind of manga, like graphic novel, and the character in that story, and she ends up falling into that world. Like that's kind of every, I think, book lover's dream is to fall into your favorite book, and that's what happens in this drama. So that'd probably be a good one to check out next. All
right, I have homework to do, but it's good homework.
Yes, it's the best homework. So we're probably going to finish this one tonight. Me and my friend Sam, she lives in New Hampshire, so we'll just call each other and you go like 1, 2, 3 and start, and then text each other through it. So it's a great way for us to be able to bond when we're not, in person together. And next one we're going to do is What's Wrong with Secretary Kim, which is another kind of funny romantic one. There's also K-dramas that get more on the serious side, but I'm kind of with everything going on, I'm like, yes, there's going to be drama in these, but I really want more of the like more happy leaning, funny leaning ones. So she's like, oh, that'll be great. Mm-hmm. That one's about a guy who's just very narcissistic and thinks he's the best thing since sliced bread. And his secretary wants to quit and he doesn't understand why. So that is a plot there. Yeah. So it's another kind of romantic, and we're kind of waiting for the Lee Min-ho drama, which is The King Eternal Monarch, I believe is the official title for that.
Oh, yeah.
To finish, releasing so that we can binge watch that, because we decided like we don't want to be, watching it and have a big cliffhanger and then have to wait a week to watch the next one. It's too much on the heart.
Definitely.
I love the drama, guys. It's just too much on the heart.
Yeah, it's too much. It's too much. So like the night before, they broke up, which is a thing that happens in these dramas. And I'm like, I'm so sad. And then we watched 2 more episodes and they got back together. And I'm like, oh, I feel so much better. So it's definitely nice to be able to like keep watching if you get to an episode where you're like, I just need to know what happens next. And I didn't have that option with W, and it was torture. Like I love that drama so much, but oh man, I probably won't make that mistake again.
Yeah, our brains don't like that anymore. We like consuming it all at once. Like none of this weekly programming.
Because I feel like with other things, it's less like dramas are designed to really leave you at kind of a cliffhanger or something that's like really serious coming up so that you want to continue watching it. And I find that it's very different from like American television where you'll have that on occasion, but I can certainly watch American television as it airs and be like, this is fine. Like I want to see what happens next, but I'm not like really, really sad that I can't watch that next episode. So it's also, I think for authors, that's going to be a really interesting experiment.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on.
Anytime.
Thank you for listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast. If you're interested in learning more about Kate, you can visit her website, katetilton.com. Or if you're interested in learning how to grow your sales, visit kobowritinglife.com.
This episode was produced by Stephanie McGrath and Joni DiPlacido with assistance from Rachel Wharton. Music was provided by Tearjerker. Editing is by Kelly Robotham. And big thanks to Kate for being a guest today.
If you're ready to start your self-publishing journey today, sign up for free at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing.